The crowd was electric that night, cameras flashing, chants echoing through the arena, and spotlights sweeping across the ring like restless searchlights. At the center of it all stood Valerie Stone, the undefeated American boxing champion. Her muscles gleamed under the lights, every flex deliberate, every smirk perfectly timed for the cameras. She loved the noise, the attention, the way people screamed her name. It wasn't just a fight to her, it was a show, and she was the star. "Bring me something challenging next time," she said into a nearby microphone, her voice echoing through the arena. "I didn't come here to babysit amateurs." Her opponent, Amara Johnson, stood silently in the opposite corner. Barely 20, a rising fighter from Jamaica who had trained in a worn-down neighborhood gym with equipment twice her age. Her gloves looked too big, her shoulders too tight, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. She hadn't come for the crowd. She hadn't come for glory. She came because this was her only chance. Valerie looked her up and down with amusement. "You sure you're in the right ring, sweetheart?" she asked loud enough for the audience to hear. A wave of laughter rippled through the stands. Amara didn't respond, she just adjusted her gloves and whispered something under her breath. Maybe a prayer, maybe a promise. When the bell rang, Valerie came out fast, not to end the fight, but to humiliate her. She threw playful jabs, dancing around Amara, mocking her footwork. "Come on, hit me," she taunted, her grin wide and cruel. The audience laughed again as Amara stumbled, her guard breaking for just a moment. Valerie winked toward the crowd, mouthing, "Too easy." Cameras flashed as if rehearsed. But something in Amara shifted. Her breathing steadied, her gaze sharpened. Every insult, every giggle from the crowd, every moment of doubt she'd ever carried, it all condensed into one simple truth: she didn't need their approval. She needed her moment. Valerie saw it, that flicker of resolve, and for a split second, her smirk faltered. But she brushed it off, circling again, still arrogant, still sure of victory. The crowd only saw a mismatch. But deep inside that ring, a storm was beginning to build, quiet, patient, and waiting for the right moment to strike. The sound of the crowd began to fade for Amara. The noise, the lights, even the weight of the cameras, everything melted into silence except the pounding of her heartbeat. Each thud echoed in her chest like a drum of defiance. Valerie's taunts had dulled into background static. What Amara heard instead were the voices from home, her coach's steady tone, her brother's laugh as they sparred on cracked pavement, her mother's prayer whispered at dawn. Valerie was still dancing, showboating for the crowd. She threw lazy combinations, all flash and no focus. Her gloves sliced through the air, never touching real danger. She wanted humiliation, not competition. Amara blinked the sweat from her eyes. She could see everything clearly now. Valerie's overconfident posture, the wide arcs of her swings, the split-second pauses between movements. She'd seen that before, not in fancy gyms but in street fights behind her neighborhood's community hall. Fighters who underestimated their opponents always left the same kind of opening. Valerie lunged forward with a dramatic right hook meant to end the round. The crowd gasped, waiting for the knockout. But Amara's body moved before her mind could think. She ducked under the punch, feeling the rush of air brush her cheek. And then, instinct took over. Her counterpunch came fast. A left hook, perfectly timed, driven from the hips, fueled by everything she'd carried into the ring. It connected squarely with Valerie's jaw. The sound wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to make the entire arena freeze. Valerie staggered back, eyes wide, disbelief written across her face. She stumbled, catching herself on the ropes. The arrogant grin was gone. The crowd murmured, uncertain, confused. Was that luck? Was it real? But before anyone could decide, Amara stepped forward again, calm, precise, relentless. She landed a body shot that made Valerie grunt, then a swift uppercut that lifted her chin skyward. The champion's legs wobbled, flashes went off, commentators shouted over each other. Then came the punch that ended everything. A clean cross, straight to the chin, like lightning breaking through the air. Valerie's head snapped back, her knees buckled, the champion crashed to the mat with a heavy thud. Silence swallowed the arena. The referee hesitated before starting the count. 6, 7, 8. Valerie tried to rise, her gloves trembling, but her body refused to obey. 10. The bell rang, not with celebration but disbelief. The referee lifted Amara's glove. For a moment, she didn't move, just stared down at her hands, as if unsure what had just happened. Then the sound returned. The silence shattered into a thunderstorm of cheers. Valerie Stone, the undefeated champion, had been defeated by the girl no one believed in. And Amara, still catching her breath, whispered the same words she had before the match, this time louder, firmer, for the whole world to hear. I belong here. The noise of the arena was deafening now, but to Amara, it felt distant, like waves crashing somewhere far away. She stood in the middle of the ring, chest heaving, gloves heavy at her sides, blinking beneath the blinding flashes of photographers. Sweat trickled down her temple, and every muscle in her body trembled, not from fear, but from the realization of what she had just done. Across from her, Valerie was still sitting on the mat, dazed and disoriented, her once proud posture gone. The medics knelt beside her, asking questions she barely seemed to hear. For the first time in years, the champion looked human. Not untouchable, not divine, just human. The referee raised Amara's hand. The crowd exploded in cheers, chanting her name over and over, Amara. Amara, Amara. She looked around, her lips trembling between a smile and disbelief. This wasn't the jeering, mocking noise from before. This was respect. Real, raw respect. Valerie slowly pushed herself up with help from her coach. Her pride had been stripped bare in front of thousands, but there was no anger in her eyes now, only the quiet sting of humility. She walked toward Amara, each step heavy with the weight of realization. The crowd fell silent, unsure what would happen next. Valerie stopped in front of the young fighter. Their eyes met. Amara expected another insult, maybe a forced handshake for the cameras. Instead, Valerie extended her glove, not with arrogance, but with sincerity. You've got fire, she said softly, her voice rough, raw. Don't ever let anyone put it out. Not even me. Amara blinked, surprised. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Then she nodded and reached out, bumping her glove against Valerie's. I didn't fight to humiliate you, she said quietly, her Jamaican accent gentle but firm. I fought to show that no one deserves to be looked down on. Respect is something we earn, not something we're handed. Valerie exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping, a faint, tired smile tugging at her lips. You've earned mine. The crowd erupted again, louder than ever. Cameras flashed as Valerie, the fallen champion, lifted Amara's arm high in the air for all to see. The moment felt bigger than a fight. It was redemption, transformation, and justice all wrapped into one. From that night forward, Amara wasn't just the girl who beat the champion. She became a symbol, a reminder that power without humility is hollow, and that even the smallest flame can outshine arrogance when it burns with purpose. As the lights dimmed and the crowd began to fade, Amara looked back at the ring one last time. She whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the echoing cheers. I didn't just win a fight tonight. I changed the story. And for the first time, the world wasn't watching Valerie Stone, they were watching Amara Johnson, the girl who turned humiliation into history.